Good morning, everyone. This is Deb Henton, the Executive Director of MASA. And on behalf of MASA and AMSD, who is also a joint sponsor of this virtual opportunity for you, we welcome you. We thank you so much for your interest in apprenticeships. There has been a note put in the chat that we have technical difficulties and your name may have defaulted to mine. And as people heard me say earlier that we're on this call, we only need one Deb Henton in this world. So if you would just go up to the screen name or click on your screen, you'll see three little dots up in the right-hand side. And if you click on that and scroll down, you should be able to rename yourself to your appropriate name and you won't have to have my name with you. So we are excited this morning, AMSD and MASA, to welcome Alex Liuzzi, who is here from the Department of Labor and Industry on behalf of them, rather. He can explain his role with the Department of Labor and Industry to talk about apprenticeships. And we know many of you obviously are very interested in apprenticeships and what they might hold for the future for our staffing needs or for our student needs. So with that, I welcome Alex, and I thank you so much for this opportunity to get feedback from our members.
Thanks, Deb, and all the other Debs on the call. I am here with Kathlene Campbell, so I'll introduce myself and then I'll let her introduce herself. I was the former executive director of PELSB, so you might have seen me in that capacity. But for the last 9 months, I've been working on building teacher apprenticeships, at first with Minneapolis Public Schools. But because it started to get so large, I left Minneapolis Public Schools to get an independent contract with the Department of Labor and Industry to be able to support this work. The work really falls into two buckets. So you probably saw in some of the invites, those buckets. One of them is to build with education stakeholders across all sectors, core competencies for the profession for apprenticeships. So that's what we're going to focus on today. But the other bucket that I'm working on is to help any district, any prep provider who wants to enter the world of teacher preparation and guide them through those first steps. So I believe it's October 17th. There'll be another session that we'll have that will focus on that. Of course, we can take questions about apprenticeship broadly today, but there'll be a different session that'll really focus on if your district wants to build apprenticeships. Today, we're going to focus on what those competencies will be, though, for that apprenticeship program. So I'll let Kathlene introduce herself next.
Thanks, Alex. Hi, everyone. I'm Kathlene Campbell. I'm the CEO of the National Center for Teacher Residencies, and I'm joining Alex today to have a discussion with all of you, as he mentioned, on the core competencies for the state when we're thinking about registered teacher apprenticeships. In a moment, I'll share my screen, and then we'll kind of take you through some of it's explaining teacher apprenticeships if you're not familiar with it, and then it's also getting your feedback as well. So Alex, I'm going to turn it over to you. And and I'm also joined today by another colleague of mine, Courtney Rowland is here as well. Courtney, if you want to give kind of a wave to everyone, and you could just briefly introduce yourself.
Yep. Thanks, Kathleen. Hi, everybody. Great to be with you. I'm supporting Kathleen and Alex on this work. I'm the policy director at NCTR.
Great. So this is the second round of feedback, and we'll talk about what that means in a little bit. But first, we wanted to find out who's in the room today. So we'll do a quick sort of go around to find out who's here, your name, your title, your organization, and maybe very briefly why you're interested in apprenticeships. We do want to spend as much time as we can getting feedback. So we'll try to do a quick whip around. This is a much larger group than we've had before, which is great. So let's do that. And then we will start with an overview of apprenticeships. So if this is new to you, don't worry, we'll give you kind of a heads up before we jump into that work. I'll call on someone, and then if you can call on the next person, we'll try to get through everybody in the screen. So I see Jeremy next on my screen. Jeremy, you want to take it away?
Sure, I'm Jeremy Kovacs. I'm the executive director of Lakes Country Service Cooperative, and I think our schools and cities and counties are certainly interested in more innovative approaches to retain and train students and teachers as well, and then certainly interested in any kind of grow your own type of programs as well. So thank you very much, and I will grab Kimberly.
Hi, I'm Kim McVeigh. I'm from St. Cloud Area Schools. I'm the supervisor of New Teacher Development. I do New Teacher Academy and Future Teacher Academy. in the district. And I'm interested anyway to grow and to recruit and retain teachers. So that's why I'm here. I don't see anybody else on my screen that hasn't been introduced. So I just can't see it because of what you got going on here. So Alex, maybe you could help me out.
Again, how about Marty Duncan?
Yes, basically, I am a semi-retired superintendent who has absolutely no intention of ever retiring. I am devoted to increasing reading among children, especially in the high school. And the reason I'm listening to this program is because I'm interested in the whole concept of apprenticeship and getting people to grow as classroom leaders.
Thank you.
Oh, I'll pick, how about Courtney?
Is there another Courtney on the line? I think I already went, so I'll
Oh,
pass
I'm
it on to, that's okay. I appreciate the second call out. How about Gina? Gina Morgan?
Hello, everyone. I am Gina Morgan. I'm the Assistant Superintendent and Transformational Leader in Spring Grove, Minnesota, and we are just working to offer more apprenticeships and pathways for our students as they are going through high school and going on to their next step. So I was curious. Thanks for having me here. And let's see. I will call on Sarah Ness.
I thought you might do that, Gina. I'm Sarah
Sorry,
Ness.
Sarah.
I love it. It's okay. I'm Sarah Ness. I work at Southeast Service Cooperative based out of Rochester. Gina is one of our schools that we support. And yeah, I'm here for the same reasons as Gina and, you know, just wanting to see what other pathways exist to help get youth into in-demand career opportunities that we have. How about Jennifer?
Hi, Jen Kruger, Assistant Director of Student Services with Roseville, and I'm particularly interested with the shortages we have in special education. And I will pass it to Joel.
Was that to me?
Yes, to Joel. Thank you.
Thanks. Joel Baumgarten, Superintendent at Buffalo Lake Hector Stewart Schools. I'm brand new to this, so I want to learn a little bit about and promote recruiting in the rural areas for staff members and growing our own staff. Is Kathlene there?
I'm not sure if there's another Kathleen, but I can call on, how about Todd Travis?
Yeah, good morning, Todd Travis, Director of Special Ed Midwest Special Education Co-op. Particularly interested in other pathways or ways to deal with our special education teacher shortage. And, you know, being in rural education, just really every area, especially at the secondary level, we're struggling. So options are good. Let's see if I can find somebody. How about Kevin Babcock?
Morning, everyone. Tri-City United Superintendent, same as everybody else, really looking at apprenticeships to fill in some gaps in rural areas. We are starting to becoming closer to the cities as people keep moving down, but really looking at some ideas for apprenticeships for creating more staffing. I don't even know who else. How about Nicole?
Good morning. My name is Nicole Lavin, and I work for the Department of Education. And my role at the Department of Education is Standards Implementation Manager. And the reason that I'm attending is that I'm very interested in the apprenticeship, the teacher licensing piece, and really addressing workforce shortages for educators in the rural communities or rural districts. And I'm going to pass it to Jolene.
Good morning to you all. My name is Jolene Delahunt, and I'm a supervisor for consultants at Sourcewell. And I'm new to my role as well. One of my team members is on the workforce specialist team, and she's in charge of recruiting and retaining teachers, which you've all mentioned, you know, the special ed, the CTEs, some of those areas are very difficult to fill in our schools. In addition, I work with the New Teacher Academy, which supports teachers in their first year. So like you, we're looking at creative, innovative ways to recruit and retain and keep our teachers in Northern Minnesota. Let's see here. Josh? You've spoken yet?
Did you say Josh?
Yep.
Okay, sorry. I had to step out to the hallway for a minute, and so I thought I heard my name. Good morning. My name is Josh Osted. I'm the superintendent at McRae. I'm attending because I wanted to thank Todd Travis, who's on the call, for bringing me to football practice every single day when I was a freshman back at Pine River, the home of the Tigers. No, the reason why I'm on today is just to learn more about just, I guess, building from within. And as a brand new superintendent, I need a lot of information.
Maybe we just open it up for folks that haven't been called on yet. I think there's 5 or 6 on my list.
Good morning, I'm Shelley Bauer. I'm at Medelia Public Schools as the superintendent, and I'm on this session to learn about ways in which we can expand our workforce. We are a recipient of a Grow Your Own grant, and that's been going extremely well. And we've got people who will be graduating hopefully at the end of next school year. And but I would like to know if there's other areas in which we can do something similar.
Morning, Superintendent Rich Schneider from Yellow Medicine East. And yeah, just like everybody else, I think out here in the rural areas, we're very short on the number of applicants we get for all of our positions. So any way we can increase our pool, especially finding our own high school students or even community members and getting them into our system is helpful. So thank you.
Good morning, everyone. This is Darren Kermis. I'm the superintendent of Southwest Metro Intermediate District. I saw the note, and we've been partnering with Alex to build apprenticeship programs here in Southwest Metro, either as part of a central effort or one with the intermediate districts. And I'm just always interested in seeing creative ideas to fill staff shortages.
Hi, I'm Gina Drellick. I'm with the Northwest Service Cooperative in the Education Services Department, and I was hoping to silently lurk and learn more about this topic so I could be of some help in this with our schools. Thank you.
I'm Dawn Sandbolt, sitting in for my superintendent Keith Buckridge from Edgerton Public Schools. So I'm pretty much here for the ride.
I'm Wendy Van Batavia. I work with Midwest Special Ed Co-op as the Assistant Director of Special Education. I work with Todd Travis, and one of my responsibilities is supporting our new teachers, Tier 1, 2, 3, etc. So just looking to learn more. Thank you.
Anybody else? We're almost everybody. So wonderful turnout, huge turnout. And I love that we have folks all over the state as well. So let's jump in. For those that don't know a lot about, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do that overview of teacher apprenticeships broadly. Then we're going to talk about the process that we are using to get to the teacher competencies, including what happened before today's meeting with other folks. Then the second draft, and give you time to talk about what you might want out of teacher apprenticeship competencies, and then tell you next steps where we're going to lead from here. So let's jump right into overview. It happened 2 years ago now that the federal government for the first time accepted apprenticeships in education. Teacher apprenticeships were acknowledged by the federal government to be formal registered apprenticeships. That doesn't mean that apprenticeship programs didn't exist in education before that, or for teachers before that, but this is the first time that the federal government's recognizing them. And when that happened, it meant that lots of states decided that they wanted to figure out what this could look like. It expands not only with now our Department of Education when we're looking at teacher preparation programs and in our state PELSB, but now also this relationship with the Department of Labor and Industry. Registered apprenticeships are not a single bucket of things. It will look very different in all different types of programs. It can be at multiple different degree levels. So some folks are talking about working with high school students to start teacher apprenticeship programs, and others at the graduate level and everything in between. And in Minnesota, I think we have around 40 different licensure programs, and those licensure programs might make the apprenticeship program look different. I think someone mentioned a special education shortage. I didn't know we had a shortage in special education, but that might be one of the first apprenticeship programs that we're building, but could look very different than, let's say, a secondary math apprenticeship program. So we want to make sure that it's very clear that when we're talking today, it is not a one box, here's what an apprenticeship program looks like. There are 5 elements that any industry must have in an apprenticeship. So the graphic at the bottom there is actually from the Department of Labor and Industry, related to all industries of apprenticeship programs. But what we're going to do is just very quickly walk through those 5 and what they might look like in education. So the first one's employment. In education, or in any apprenticeship program, the employer is the lead, and the lead of the apprenticeship program. They must work with an employee, that is the apprentice, throughout that program. So in education, that becomes a district or charter school. There are different ways, different types of educational organizations that might support this work, but the person who submits the application to the Department of Labor and Industry does need to be the employer of that individual. And the majority of the folks that we're working with right now, that individual, that apprentice, will be a paraprofessional. It doesn't have to be, but to be an apprentice in teaching, they will need to have that student contact time, which is why right now we're really focusing on the paraprofessional role within schools. Any apprenticeship program has to have a graduated pay scale increase. So at some point throughout the apprenticeship program, that apprentice needs to be paid more to honor the learning that they've done throughout that program. It needs to have at least one pay scale change within that model. The model that we're currently looking at with some districts is a two-year, 2-summer type program from an AA to a BA model. And in that, there's looking at from year 1 to year 2, a pay increase that would align to that requirement by the Department of Labor and Industry. And teacher preparation programs that will be partnering with these apprenticeship programs can look at that as checkpoints. When someone's going through an undergraduate degree program, obviously you need to check in with them to see how their progress is doing. So we can connect those two with what is called in the apprenticeship world related instruction, or that teacher preparation provider. Any apprenticeship program needs to lead to some recognized credential in that field. In Minnesota, that's going to be a Tier 3 license. So any apprenticeship program must lead to a Tier 3 license, which means we need to incorporate PELSB into this process as well. An application will be going to the Department of Labor and Industry to set up an apprenticeship program, a registered apprenticeship program, but the teacher preparation provider will also need to submit that program to PELSB to make sure that it meets the requirements for a teaching license. The individual will get a certificate of completion of the apprenticeship program and a Tier 3 teaching license. It'll be very important when we're talking to potential apprentices to let them know that this is not a Tier 3 license that has a little asterisk on it. It's not anything different. The Tier 3 license looks exactly the same as anyone who goes through any other alternative or traditional teacher preparation program, and can lead to a Tier 4 license after they're teaching for 3 years. The last 2 pieces are kind of the structure of that work. So on-the-job learning is key, core, if you will, to any apprenticeship program. So that means taking all the licensure standards, and in the case of an undergraduate model, even undergraduate credit, and moving the majority of that work happening on the job. Earn while you learn is sort of the key message of Minnesota's Department of Labor and Industry and their apprenticeship department. So that's some work. Lots of models have already been shaped over the last 20 years where licensure standards can happen through field-based experience, residency type models. And so apprenticeship is just taking off on that model and then having the district really support that partnership through the work to make sure that the standards are really met, job embedded. But of course, everything needs to come with related instruction. In other industries, sometimes this is called related technical instruction. So an electrician who is working on the job as an electrician is meeting the core competencies of the profession for an electrician through that work, that job embedded learning, but then is often sent to, let's say, a Dunwoody to take a couple courses that meet the related technical instruction. In education, that's a teacher preparation program. We have somewhere around 35 approved traditional and alternative programs in Minnesota, and any of those programs can become a related instruction for an apprenticeship program. However, in education, with the amount of standards, it won't look like other industries in where an individual is just sort of sent to that as related technical instruction. You're going to want those two to work really closely together so that the standards that have to happen in that related technical instruction to lead to a Tier 3 license get embedded into that work. So there's going to be a lot of connection between this on-the-job learning and the related instruction within education, and that model is already happening. And with that, I will pass it off to Kathlene to talk about our process so far.
Thanks, Alex. So earlier this summer, Alex and I got together and we took a look at the U.S. Department of Labor's competencies for registered apprenticeships in education. We then compared it to the 2023 Minnesota Standards of Effective Practice that are actually going to be implemented starting, or have to be implemented starting July 1, 2025. And we were pleasantly surprised and pleased that the majority of the competencies actually met the standards of effective practice. There were only about 12 that did not. And that's important because a state agency has to adhere to about 80% of what the U.S. Department of Labor's competencies are. Since then, also, there's an organization that consists of about 30 education organizations across the country called Pathways Alliance. And Pathways Alliance worked really closely with the Department of Labor at the federal level to also make sure that the INTAS standards would be approved as core competencies. So there's a number of competencies that the Department of Labor has actually formally said okay to. In addition, they also highlighted that apprentices, just like in other fields, are not the teacher of record, but they are working alongside that journey worker. So that's just important to know as well. From all of this information, Alex and I actually proposed back in August some listening sessions to a number of stakeholders across Minnesota to see if they agreed with using the standards of effective practice plus an additional workforce standard to address those 12 that weren't met. So we held listening sessions throughout August, and we heard some wonderful feedback. We did hear from a number of individuals who said, yes, but I think we need to tweak what the wording is for some of those standards. It felt like it was a little bit too far in the minutia. And then there's others who said, well, why aren't we just really working with the standards of effective practice? So we took all of that feedback, and now we're in round 2, which you had a chance to see on the first slide, for September and October, where we're meeting with different groups across the state to hear from you of what you like about the second draft that's being proposed. So if you're wondering what's being proposed, here it is. So there are 2 options that we have identified based off stakeholder feedback. The first option would be for Minnesota to select the 2023 Standards of Effective Practice. These are the new Standards of Effective Practice that were just approved. And they would serve as the core competencies for teacher apprenticeship programs. That does not mean you couldn't add some additional ones on top of it for your own individual program. Remember, Alex said at the beginning, it can look a little bit different depending on the program, but it does mean everyone in the state would have to adhere to these competencies, which the related instruction providers already have to do so regardless. The second option is take the 2023 standards of effective practice and an additional workforce standard to still get to some of the concerns that we've heard from some districts where they'll feel like the standards of effective practice do not necessarily meet all of the needs of teachers in the classroom. So, in case you haven't had a chance to look at the standards of effective practice in more detail, there are 8 standards in the 2023 standards of effective practice, and you have a chance to see kind of a brief breakdown of how many kind of substandards exist underneath each one of those categories. Additionally, if you're thinking about option 2, we're proposing 8 additional standards that would only be required for individuals who are in an apprenticeship program. And so on the screen right now, you have a chance to see that it's identifying items like participating in staff meetings and school activities for a positive school climate, to moving to engaging with community partners, to prioritizing tasks and including strategies for paperwork as some examples. At this point, what Alex and I really wanted to do was kind of open this up to get some feedback from you all. And so we have 2 main questions for you. The first question is, if you like either of the 2 options, and if you think that they should serve as the core competencies for the state of Minnesota. And then the second question really is thinking about, if you do like that second option that has the workforce standards, do you think these competencies are the right ones? In a moment, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and put up a Jamboard so that we can actually record what your thoughts are, and then we'll open it up to all of you. So Alex, I'm gonna mute myself for a minute while I change the slide.
You showed that so quickly. Is it possible to put those standards in the chat?
They're on the first slide of the Jamboard as well. So if you go to that link, I believe the standards are there. Plus we can put in the chat a document that we had shared. Oh yeah, there they are, right there in the Jamboard.
We knew that that was going to be really fast for everyone to see. So as I was just switching, the 8 new proposed standards for option 2 are on your screen on the left-hand side. We'd love to hear from you all. Do you think there's a value in making these standards their standalone workforce standard, or do you think we should just focus on the standards of effective practice, or do you disagree with both options as well? There's always that choice.
Also, feel free to jump in. Sometimes it's helpful just to ask questions generally about apprenticeship programs to help kind of start thinking about what does it actually mean for a person to be going through an apprenticeship program. And I can point out when we did the intro, someone mentioned high school apprenticeships. And it's this, there is an interesting relationship when we talk about apprenticeships. Oftentimes we start to think of other industries, career and technical education fields, because that's where the core of apprenticeships have been over time. When we're talking about apprenticeships, we're really talking about teacher pathways, which can enter the high school, but is different than helping high school students with, let's say, a construction career through apprenticeships. One of the connections that we can start making, and I've met with folks at North Branch about actually building an apprenticeship program in this field, is to think about what are teacher pathways for teachers of career and technical education, sort of a triple layer of apprenticeships, right? Having the CTE teacher helping their high school students through apprenticeships in other industries, and that CTE teacher going through an apprenticeship program themselves and teaching.
I know these are new for everyone. What initial thoughts are coming to mind as you see these workforce standards on the screen right now?
I would say that some of them seem like really common sense type things, like the first one. Like, of course, attend staff meetings and school activities to support a positive school climate. I don't know if these are the only competencies, but is there a strong enough focus on raising student achievement?
And because these are in addition to the standards of effective practice, then the standards of effective practice do have an entire standard on not only instruction, but also assessment. But you could flag whether or not you think the new standards go far enough.
Thank you, Kathleen.
The only aspect I find confusing is this list of what you call competencies feels a bit more like benchmarks to me. They're much more specific than an average standard, where a competency would usually be something bigger than a standard or overarching. So maybe it's my understanding of the language between benchmarks, standards, and competencies, but these seem very much like very specific in the experience.
And I would say that's not your misunderstanding. We have heard that from some other individuals as well. And so it was important to us to make sure we shared the same ones with you all as well to get this feedback. But we have heard that it might be too specific for these particular standards, not necessarily the standards of effective practice.
Hey, this is Darren. My thought in general on rules, regulations, and others is keep it as simple and direct as humanly possible. And I fail to see where this adds anything. We already have standards that have been vetted and approved and are there. Why would we add additional barriers and burden? In fact, isn't the purpose of apprenticeship to tear down barriers and burdens? This just seems to add more to it. So I don't see the point. And I don't mean to be flippant, I'm just being honest.
No, and you are fine. That is why we had option one, which was just the standards of effective practice for that exact reason of trying to streamline requirements instead of adding additional ones. However, we did have some stakeholders that pushed back against that. So we wanted to make sure we still showed both options.
You know what, I guess I'm going to have a differing opinion, working with new teachers, that, the standards that we have are important, but I like these standards along with those standards because it gives some real things that they need to know to prepare them to be in the classroom. So like the lessons, also, just behavioral issues, things like that, the practical things that they need to know day to day when they step foot in the classroom, so it'll prepare them. So I do like this because it gives them some real things and more specific things that they need to do.
Thank you for your feedback. And that is what we've heard when we've shared option two as well. So we're really capturing everyone's feedback so that we can figure out what the third draft would be and the recommendations that we would provide to the Department of Labor and Industry.
I'm wondering if some of this might be specific more to individual districts. Looking at a number of the districts that we are working with, several of these items are things that are naturally occurring, probably because of the size and the need for multiple bodies to support a number of students or different areas And then some of these things naturally occur within discussions with our new teacher groups in their mentorship program. So I guess I'm kind of in line with Darren with these. I mean, they're important, certainly, but I feel like we're preparing teachers with the other standards. And then these are pieces that maybe new teachers are learning on the job, because we can only prepare them to a certain level. And then they need to be set free to learn other components, if that makes sense. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you for sharing. And it does. And remember, every apprenticeship program can look a little bit different. And so to your point, Wendy, it could be that perhaps a particular district may say, well, we'd like to add 1 or 2 additional competencies on top of it. There's the ability to do that. You want to have your core that goes across the state, but there are some differences that can occur as well.
I think that makes a lot of sense, because what we might need in a rural district might be different than, you know, a Minneapolis school district.
That's a good point. Other thoughts, concerns? I was giving extra wait time on Zoom because it takes a little bit longer to unmute. So, okay. Well, I think that this was really helpful feedback. Alex, I can switch it back to our deck to continue, unless you would like to pause a little bit more.
Oh, that's okay. Let's do that. And while you're switching back, I can talk briefly, kind of, so big picture of this. What the Department of Labor and Industry is looking for is education stakeholders to kind of give a general nod to this is what we think is the core foundation for apprenticeships. But it's not stamped anywhere. It's not, they don't take that document and say, now this is absolutely the core competencies for the profession. What happens is the first employer, district or charter school, to submit an apprenticeship application to the Department of Labor and Industry, that document, when they say these are the core standards that we're going to use, DLI looks at that, and once that's approved, that acts as the foundation. So DLI is looking for something that the education stakeholders have said, this is what we want. So then when that first application comes through, they can make sure that those two align. What happens after that is every program that submits an application for an apprenticeship has an 80-20 rule that they look at. 80% of the competencies have to be the same. So to those conversations about, you know, can it look differently? If we use the standards of effective practice as the foundation, districts then could look at those 900 standards that we have, or their own workforce needs, what it looks like on the ground for their teachers, what are those, you know, sort of more benchmarky physical actions that's happening in the classroom, and add those to their application for their apprenticeship program. So there is that opportunity for ongoing change over the years.
Alex, I'm just going to ask, did you see the question in the chat about the age on paraprofessionals? I'm wondering if and I shouldn't make any assumptions, if the person that put that in there is wondering about how this apprenticeship program would work with high school age students. And that's a guess on my part.
Yeah, it's a good question. So the person would have to be an employee. So if they're a high school student, I'm assuming you can't then also employ them as a paraprofessional, but you could have a what they call in the apprenticeship world, a pre-apprenticeship program, where the individual is gaining some of that apprenticeship work, working with, let's say, early childhood students, you know, and senior in high school, working in an early childhood setting, kind of a work-based learning type of environment through that, to build some of those apprenticeship skills so that when they graduate and they're 18, they have some of the apprenticeship pieces already done. So definitely folks that are looking at high school pathways will want to dig into what that actually looks like. Currently, all the models moving forward haven't jumped into there. So it would be you'd be paving the way for education, and we'd have to answer a lot of questions.
I'm curious, is there a conflict with the Grow Your Own student pathway and adult pathway programs? Because it does sound very, it sounds almost the same. I wonder what the differences are.
It's a great question, and I almost feel like we need a graphic that starts to explain it. So Grow Your Own is this huge bubble. So let's talk for adult pathways for a minute. Growing your own really can mean any type of a program where employees in whatever stage in your district, or even just sort of community members within your district, you are helping connect them with preparation to lead them to becoming a teacher or a paraprofessional or whatever you're trying to grow within. Within that big bucket, there's traditional teacher prep models, right? You can partner with a traditional program and just send someone on nights and weekends to that. That's definitely in there. Alternative pathways are in there. Residency programs are expanding in the state and are becoming a bigger bucket of that Grow Your Own. And now apprenticeships fit into that bigger bubble as well. And they don't exist, but we presume that it'll be a kind of a growing circle within that bigger piece of Grow Your Own. So the Grow Your Own dollars at the Department of Education definitely can be used for apprenticeship programs. Now in the student section of that Grow Your Own, those Grow Your Own grant dollars, that is a little bit unsure at this point. No one has looked at what is it, kind of looking at the apprenticeship programs to fit into that model. What's that going to look like and how's that going to impact funding? And because no one's looked at it, I really have no answers and haven't talked to MD about that, what that could look like. But my presumption is there would have to be some relationship then with the Department of Labor and Industry to call that student pathway an apprenticeship before you were able to kind of fit it into that Grow Your Own bucket. But the other piece definitely overlapping.
Alex, just to add on, if you're all wondering, well, why would someone choose an apprenticeship versus maybe one of the other pathways? Because I think that's a natural additional question. A lot of it comes to additional funding as well. So apprenticeships would open you up for potential funding, not only with the Department of Labor and Industry, but also the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act dollars if you apply and then it's accepted as well. So there are additional funding streams that would come along with that could help lower the cost to not only operate the program, but also for tuition for students. So there is some other benefits as well. And you have a chance to see that on your screen.
And we can take a minute to talk about those because in the introduction, so many of you mentioned shortages and just trying to figure out new pathways. Then the state has tens of millions of dollars that they put forth to this. And it's an anecdotal opinion. My opinion is that we don't have enough individuals that are interested in pursuing education under the current bucket of pathways to even spend all of those millions on pathways. And so it's looking outside of those boxes to see what are other new pathways. When I started this work at Minneapolis Public Schools, I had 60 paraprofessionals who had opportunity to have fully funded tuition to become a teacher, but they didn't want to enter that. They didn't feel welcome at institutes of higher education for whatever reason. It didn't feel like that was a setting for them. They didn't want to leave their job in any capacity. They didn't want to work nights and weekends, to go take night and weekend courses. So the apprenticeship model allows that individual to remain an employee and that to be the core of who they are. They get to stay with the students that they care about. They get to stay in the districts and the school that they care about and honor the work that they're doing by having job embedded learning attached to the work that they're doing with students. And so be paid that salary that they are already receiving as a paraprofessional. And then on top of that, have their full tuition paid for throughout the programming that then happens. Models can be night and weekends. So I'm not ruling that out. But the options that are currently being built are any of that related instruction is happening during the workday as well, so that a paraprofessional doesn't have to take that extra time. So it's really trying to expand the opportunities outside of the boxes that we've already thought of to expand the pool of individuals that might be able to start addressing that teacher shortage.
And I'll pause here to see if there are additional questions either about the core competencies themselves or apprenticeships on a larger scale. Okay, well, just in case you needed some time to really sit with the core competencies that we proposed, either option 1 or option 2, we did create a survey where you could provide additional feedback. So if you're someone who's thinking, well, I need to sit on this and really look at what the 2023 standards of effective practice are and the workforce standards, you still have time to give us additional feedback. Alex, I'm sure we'll send over the deck to all of you, so you'll have a chance to look at it. And then you can either click on the link, we'll put that in the chat, or if you have a phone nearby, use that QR code just to fill out the survey. But this information will really help us as we gather feedback from across Minnesota to create a third draft that will provide for the governor's roundtable in November to talk about what those core competencies are for Minnesota.
Maybe we can briefly talk about those next steps. So we have about 4 more of these type of listening sessions targeted at different organizations. Tomorrow, MREA is hosting one at noon. And I believe some of the links went out together. So when you registered for this one, if you registered for this one, you'd see that there was that as well. So if you have others that you want to participate in this conversation, please send them to that tomorrow at noon. But we're also doing this with teacher preparation providers, with Education Minnesota. We've already met with state agencies. So we're collecting all of that information. And what it will lead to is on November 3rd, the governor is inviting around 70 to 100 folks to sit down and look at the draft 3, what comes of these conversations, to look at those core competencies. Again, not to put sort of an official stamp on them, but to say, okay, Department of Labor and Industry, when you see that first application, this is the realm of what you should be looking for in that process. So that means the first apprenticeship programs, which are currently being designed right now, after November 3rd, they would be ready to submit their application to the Department of Labor and Industry, because there would be, DLI would have something to compare to when they see that application. Right now, if someone submitted, DLI would probably say, wait, we need to finish that statewide work before that happened. Which, for those then districts that are trying to think about, what does this look like in my district and how could I start this? I would say, please reach out directly to me. I'm having lots of individual conversations with districts about timing, planning, what that looks like. But also on October 17th, we'll have another session hosted by MASA to really focus on that. What does it mean to become an apprenticeship program within your district? But we have time for some of those questions now if folks wanted to ask.
I have a question. Oh, sorry.
Perfect, Kimberly, go ahead.
I got lots of questions. What does it, just so I'm clear, the timeline for application, you're still in the vetting process of this, correct? And you, what I'm just so I understand, you are going to have a follow-up meeting, and then you said there's an application. When is the timeline for the application, and when a district, if they're approved, when could they start this program?
Great question. So the Department of Labor and Industry could take an application today if a district was ready. It does take quite a lot of design and build to get to that point. So there's a few districts that we're working with that are trying to do it kind of on a 6 to 9 month design period to get both the application to the Department of Labor and Industry and PELSB, because they have to approve the licensure program for it. That 6 to 9 months is rushed. So I'm starting to talk to districts right now who are looking at a summer 2025 launch to give them more time to build a partnership with a preparation provider and co-build an apprenticeship program that meets everybody's needs, and then they can submit to the Department of Labor and Industry. So, but whenever they're ready, they can submit it. DLI said it takes about 90 days for them to look at that application. PELSB takes a little bit longer for licensure programs, for new licensure programs that they have to review. So you'll want to talk to PELSB through probably your preparation provider about what that looks like, what that process looks like. And then as soon as you are approved, you can start an apprentice. They could start the day after. Obviously in education circles, you probably need to do some marketing and recruitment to then get those individuals. So we're kind of looking at trying to get approval for an apprenticeship program in the March timeframe so that we can then advertise it to paraprofessionals to start either that summer or the following school year in the apprenticeship program. But technically they can start as soon as DLI says you're an approved apprenticeship program.
And I'm going to second that as a former dean in a school vet in Minnesota. Typically, we started recruitment as early as the end of January, beginning of February for a summer launch. And you really do need that amount of time for your recruiters to go out into the community to recruit individuals, as well as into your schools for paraprofessionals. So you want to give people time to really understand the programs that they potentially are joining. Any other questions? Because I think it's helpful to hear when someone's asking a question. We find that people have asked similar questions in different sessions, but it really does answer or clear up some confusion that people may have about apprenticeship programs, because we have so many different pathways in education. We're a little bit unique when it comes to the apprenticeship space. I see there's a question about, has there been a working group of paraprofessionals as well? Did they have a chance to reflect on this opportunity? Alex, do you want to share what's occurred with the different groups?
Yeah, those conversations really started at Minneapolis Public Schools. I've met with over 100, shadowed many of them, and they really built the model that then Minneapolis sort of took and is moving forward with. And then some four intermediate districts, Darren this year was talking about their collaboration and really grounded that work. Since then, we have also met with paraprofessionals in the 4 intermediate districts to ask specifically what their settings look like. And actually it mirrored a lot of what happened there. Education First, an organization that supports different types of educational opportunities across the nation. They also had a focus group with paraprofessionals in Minnesota and put together a summary of that data of what would look like. And so yes, lots of those conversations to help build. We're also making sure that we're connecting. Unions have to be a key part of any of these conversations. And there's 2 or 3 unions that represent paraprofessionals in Minnesota. So we've been connecting with those union leaders, both locally and then through Education Minnesota and the AFL-CIO statewide. But that's all to say, yes, those conversations have happened to help guide the conversation so far of what the programs should look like. But when a district sets down to design their program, then there should be that renewed engagement with the paraprofessionals and the teachers who need to be the journey workers, the apprenticeship title for that mentor teacher for those 2 years. They should be at the table helping design it within that district and identifying what their specific needs will be. Because what we don't want is we don't want folks to build another program that nobody wants to enroll in.
And we do have a supplemental sheet. So if anyone's interested, reach out to Alex, but we can also send you a supplemental sheet that kind of starts to highlight who would be part of that design team, what are some suggestions, and then how do you get started. So I think Alex is probably the perfect point person, and then I'm able to help however you'd like.
I think I just heard her say Alex is perfect. Is that what I?
Of course, Alex. And then we can also share it with everyone. That would be great. So we wanted to help people start to imagine, like, how would you start this process if you're brand new to it? So we think that that would be helpful for everyone. We have time for one more question if anyone has it.
Maybe I could just offer one comment just in support of what you guys are saying. We have had several conversations with our paras. First of all, our paras are represented by MSEA. Our field representative is very excited about this possibility and the prospect. We were initially thinking, you know, are they going to support this because we have a hard time hiring paras, and this would take people out of the para group and move them to teachers. And instead of that being a fear, our union is viewing that as an opportunity because of some of the things Alex already mentioned. This would have staggered pay increases as they move up. They'd still be under para contract, but we would create additional lane opportunities. It creates some extra additional hours. Our paras work 36 hours a week, and this would make the apprentice paras 40 hours a week for some of that additional time. They echoed what you guys were saying about the courses and other work needs to be during the workday, not evenings, not weekends. Part of the reason that some of these folks haven't gone the traditional route is they have real lives. They have things going on that they're not available to be doing that. If they could just go back to school and go the traditional route that many of us did, they would have done so already. So, and that goes to my earlier comment. The one thing I'm hearing about them is do not put barriers in front of me. This ought to be about tearing down barriers, tearing down hurdles, getting people with the talent and motivation to work with kids in front of kids. And on the teaching side, as opposed to the supportive side. And no disrespect to paras or the supportive side, but it is a different level. And that's what we want to tap them on the shoulder and help them be able to attain. And I am cautiously optimistic that this could be a very, very positive way for us to do that, at least in our little corner of the metro here in our intermediate district.
Yeah, I put my email in there, but reach out to Darren too. Southwest Metro was the first intent to apply for an apprenticeship program ever submitted to the Department of Labor and Industry. So he's got the most experience so far, and they're moving along fast. So good stuff happening. Well, we appreciate the hour today, everybody, and my email's in there. We'll send more information out to MASA that they can send out. We really appreciate this opportunity to get your feedback. And then again, if you would like more information about building it within your district, I'm happy to come and meet with you specifically, but also come to October 17th, that session to learn more. And then Deb, I don't know if you have anything you want to say to wrap up?
Just thanks very much to you, Courtney and Kathleen, Alex, for an informative session, and for all of our participants. We really appreciate it and look forward to future information. This holds so much promise to helping us staff our schools with quality individuals. So thank you again. Have a good day, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.